Welcome to Real Rockford Files, for tales of the paranormal, supernatural, and the flat-out unbelievable. Today I'll be sharing ghost stories and hauntings. Let's get into it. Story 1. When I was around 5, my aunt got diagnosed with cancer, so my mom left me at my dad's for over a month so she'd be able to care for her sister 24/7. One night, I woke up crying and asking if my mom came with my aunt. When my family questioned me, I said my aunt came to say goodbye and that she loves me and will take care of me, but did mom come with her? I'm gonna miss my aunt. 5 minutes later, the phone rang, and it was my mom telling us my aunt had just passed away. Story 2. My Uncle Bill died when I was 4. He and I were incredibly close. He was my favorite uncle, and I was his favorite nephew. I lived in Colorado, but we went down to Alabama for his funeral. I'm 31 now, so I don't remember him actually visiting me, but I do remember telling my mom, "Mom, Uncle Bill says it's going to snow." My mom called me and reminded me that Uncle Bill was gone, and we were in Alabama in 1995. It doesn't snow here. Uncle Bill and I got the last laugh, though, when we all woke up the next day and it was snowing in Alabama. Very lightly, but it was there. Story 3. My mom died when I was a pretty young adult. I couldn't get her to answer her phone, so I went to her house to check on her and found her body. My mom's sister and I have always been very close. When she came in town for the funeral, we decided to spend the night at my mother's for a few nights to feel closer to her and be amongst her things. We were sitting in the living room with her cat. When I found her, her cat was curled around her head. She loved that cat. We were talking about her life, and it got a little bit deep. We were both crying and hoping she was at peace. Suddenly the cat, who was sitting between us, jumped up and started hissing at the fireplace. Then the flue to the fireplace slammed shut really loud and scared the shit out of us. We then heard footsteps above us in her bedroom where she died. It was scary and not comforting for us or the cat. My mom committed suicide and had been really despondent after my dad died. She was also the kind of person who never wanted anyone to feel sorry for her. I think we got too personal about her life and pissed her off. I had several other uncomfortable moments in her house while cleaning it out. My then 8-year-old son and I were packing boxes and her bedroom door slammed shut. It was a nice day, no windows or doors open. My son looked at me and asked, "Why is Granny so sad?" Story 4. When my dad became somewhat of a believer, it was in his 50s. My grandmother was in hospice and we received the news she had just passed away. My dad and I were on the back porch hanging out, talking about everything. He seemed off though. Yes, I know his mother just passed, but this was different. He seemed really off. I asked him about it, and he said he had the strangest dream the night my grandmother died. He was in the room with her in Michigan. We live in Virginia. My grandmother stood up, hugged and kissed him, told him everything would be okay. She proceeded to somehow walk out of some new door in the room that led to a green pasture with other relatives that had passed. He could only recognize his grandparents. The others he didn't know who they were, but something in his gut said they were other relatives my grandmother knew. It's crazy because now when we talk about it, he doesn't act like it's a big deal. He was just having a crazy dream that was influenced by the situation. But he dreamt it the night she passed away. It was like the other relatives and her were telling him, "It'll be okay. I'm better off now." Story 5. My mom passed away in early November 2005. I had gotten married at the end of May of that year, and she waited to tell the family that she was sick until the end of June. She didn't want to take away from the joy of the baby of the family getting married. It was way too fast, and none of us were ready to let her go. She always said she wanted to go at home, no hospital or hospice. Said it for years, especially after my dad passed when I was 16. He passed at home, surrounded by all of us up until the end. That was what she wanted too. In the house he built with his bare hands, and the house they raised the family in. So that's what we did. Basically, her 6 children's moved back home and stayed with her for the final 2 months. We took shifts to see our husband, wives, and work during that time, but at any given point, there were four of us there 24 hours a day, making sure she was surrounded by love and never alone. Now, I didn't take her death well. I mean, I did everything that needed to be done and kept myself together, but we were close, and this was so fast, and I didn't want to believe it. I can't tell you the number of times I caught myself calling her to then just stare at the phone mid-dial and realize she wouldn't pick up. Well, a month after she had passed, I was alone at my own home watching TV. It was only about 7 p.m., so dark at that time of the year in New England, when movement caught my eye from my eye on the left. 12 feet from me, my mom walked through my kitchen stirring something in a bowl. She paused in the doorway, gave a little wave with her fingers from the hand wrapped around the bowl, as her head tilted with a smile and moved past the doorway. I was frozen to where I was sitting, so I called out, "Mom?" and heard her laugh, her healthy laugh, from before she got sick and couldn't smile anymore, let alone laugh. I went to the kitchen, but there was nothing. I swear on my life that this was real. She was there. Thing is, my mom was a great baker. She passed a lot of her recipes on to me, and while not as often as I would liked, we baked together. It was time that made both of us happy. We laughed, chatted, gossiped, and drank tea while we waited for a delicious concoction to come from the oven. To this day, whenever I make her cheesecake, cookies, cream puffs, or meringues, I'm happy. I dance around the kitchen as I stir the bowl, and I think of her the time she visited me. She has only visited me in my dreams since, always to warn me or help me with the problem that I'm having. I like to think that she was able to muster the energy to come see me in person just that once, so that I knew she was okay. I didn't have to be sad that she would always be there. Story 6. My biological dad lives in a creepy old farmhouse he renovated. I was helping him build out the office late one night. He went to the bathroom and I kept plunking away. I was on the floor and set my hammer down. I felt something, a presence, and looked to where I thought someone would be. Nothing. I reached back down for my hammer, and it's out of arm's reach, maybe 5 feet further than where I had set it down. I hadn't moved at all. He comes back after he's finished, and I tell him what had just happened. He laughed and said, "The little girl must be playing with you." Little girl, what? He then tells me that every now and then he hears a little girl laughing, and has even seen her. She's always wearing the same pair of overalls, and she just kind of wanders around upstairs. I'm not one to believe in paranormal experiences, but I have no explanation other than a little girl ghost just wanting to play. Story 7. I used to work in a bar that wasn't exactly a jail, but temporarily held people awaiting court and sentencing. Everyone had stories about the residential ghost who we called Sebastian. First time I saw Sebastian, I looked down the stairs while I was opening and saw some legs in black pants and smart shoes. The ceiling obscured his torso upwards. When I went downstairs to ask how he got in, he ran down the hallway and vanished. A few other staff members mentioned seeing a man in a black suit who would be in the bar after hours while he'd be cleaning, but when you'd approach or speak to him, he'd turn a corner and disappear. Sometimes after closing, you'd hear someone ringing the bells on staff members' bikes downstairs, or you'd hear a crash and the bikes would be moved to a different place. Other times you'd see a man in black duck into the office, and by the time you'd enter, he'd be gone. The clincher that convinced us all that it wasn't just a thing we all believed because we all joked about it so often was the day the new chefs came. They didn't speak much English and would leave once dinner service was over, so they never engaged in the Sebastian stories. One day, one of them asked about a man in black who kept leaning on the ordering window while they were cleaning. Sebastian was pretty chill though. He never scared us or did anything mean. I think he just liked hanging out. Story 8. When I was 15, my dad was driving to a friend's house to practice some roller hockey. My buddy lived in a two-story log cabin with a long, winding driveway. It was the first time I had been to his house and had been told his parents wouldn't be home until later in the evening. As we drove up, my dad says he thought my friend's parents weren't home, and I told him they weren't. He then points to a second-story window and says, "Well, someone is here." I look up and see an older male dressed in Western clothing and wearing a big cowboy hat. This is Texas, so that isn't unusual. I said, "I guess they got home early," and shrugged it off. A while later, I mentioned something about asking his parents something, and he says they won't be home till later. I point out both my dad and I saw someone in his house, and he freaks out because no one was supposed to be there. We then go in the house to check it out and don't find anyone. After his parents got home, we were in the back room of the house, and I see a picture of a guy who had been upstairs. I pointed out to my buddy, and he turns white and says that was his granddad, who died 6 years earlier. Turns out my buddy's parents believed the house to be haunted by multiple spirits. Story 9. Was visiting a friend in Chicago. She told me under no uncertain terms the ghost of a woman who lived there wasn't really fond of men staying there. I was told that I needed to make sure I closed any door behind me, unless she slammed the door behind me. Sure as shit, first night I'm there, I get up to go pee in the middle of the night. I didn't close the bedroom door when I came back from the bathroom. The door slammed so hard it knocked a piece of art off the damn wall. Scared the living crap out of me. Had to go back to the bathroom again. Story 10. When I was about 12 during a summer, my sister, who was 5 years older than me, was out with friends after work. We shared a bedroom. I was up late, doodling in a notebook in bed, and had an older glass TV next to my bed that was turned off. At one point, I looked up and saw, in the reflection of the TV screen, my sister walk out of our bedroom doorway and into the stairwell. When I turned around to greet her, she wasn't there. I get up and walk into the stairwell, and all the lights are still off downstairs and in the bathroom next to our bedroom. So I think she must have ran downstairs really fast and head down myself to find no one again. At this point, I'm getting a little spooked and wanted to prove myself wrong, so I went outside and her car was still gone. I sprint back inside and run back upstairs to my parents' room and wake my mom up to tell her that I was pretty sure I'd just seen a ghost. She was too terrified to do much for it, and so I went back into my bedroom petrified. When I thought back on it, I realized the girl was in a long-sleeved dress that looked somewhat vintage. My sister was very much a tomboy in those days, but she had blonde hair like my sister and was looking towards me while walking out of the room. I stayed awake with my light on until my actual sister got home and I felt safe to sleep. It still creeps me out a bit to think about it to this day. I don't really believe much in the afterlife, but I know I saw a young girl walking out of the door. I wasn't really tired. I hadn't been watching anything earlier in the evening to scare me, and even further wasn't scared when I first saw her because I thought it was just my sister. I can't explain it though. Never saw her or anything like it again. Story 11. My grandma came to visit me the night she passed. I was in school and working, so I couldn't leave to visit her. My dad said it was okay and to focus on school. A couple of days later, she came to me in my dream. She looked like she did when I was a kid and was wearing pajamas she always wore. She said she was leaving. In the dream, I felt like I knew where she was going and understood. I told her I was going to miss her, and she said she would miss me too. Woke up and my buddy was giving me a ride to work, and my dad calls me crying. She had passed. I told my dad my dream and he believed me. He was happy that I saw her before she left. I don't believe in ghosts, gods, or anything supernatural, but I still can't deny what happened. Story 12. When my daughter was 1 year old, she gently touched a picture of my wife's deceased grandfather, whom she would not have known anything about at this point, as we did not explain death yet and did not talk about deceased family members yet, and said that she met him before she was born and that he was nice to her. He is the person she was named for, and that incident made me feel really, really happy. When everyone asks what happens when you die, my answer is now, I have no idea, but it's the same place you were in before you were born. When she was 2, she was talking to somebody, apparently a little boy that was not there. When I asked about her imaginary friend, she solemnly told me that he lived in our house a long time ago. I asked no further questions. About a year later, after we had moved out, our neighbor caught his kid talking into an imaginary friend. When asked, he was told that the boy she was playing with was my daughter's friend. At least, if it was a ghost, it was friendly.